Finally, after a long and boring 8 months, September is here. And everyone knows what that means. It's time to kick off America's pastime, football. Or wait, is that supposed to be baseball? Pretty sure they stopped doing baseball a few years ago, but I could be wrong. Regardless, college football is kicked off, and that means it's time for bad mascots, student athletes being exploited for their free wages, and of course, bad coaching decisions. Now look, I'd love to sit here and tell you that I'm above being a Monday morning quarterback, but I'm not. And on a wild weekend that included many moments that a lot of gamblers thoroughly enjoyed or did not enjoy, like this one, yeah, that seems like a totally reasonable ending to a game to me. But there was one game in particular I wanted to hone in and talk about, and I'm talking, of course, about the Oregon-Auburn game that was a down-to-the-wire thriller. Now, being that I've not coached football or played football, I'm not going to say anything really about the plays these teams should or shouldn't have run. But I am going to talk about the math and the decisions that they made from a strategic standpoint when it came to the score. There are 3 moments in this game I want to discuss, and all 3 of them are actually moments where Auburn decided to kick an extra point instead of going for a 2-point conversion. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first one. So we're 2/3 of the way into the third quarter, and Auburn has the ball. They're driving down the field, and they score a touchdown to now go down 21-12. So in this situation, Auburn now has to make a decision. Do they want to kick an extra point, or do they want to go for 2? It's traditional football logic here to go for 1 so that you're still in the game and the next score could tie it up, and then you can force overtime. And then that way it seems like a less daunting task. You keep it more manageable. But the reality is that the difference between these decisions is actually quite close, and I want to show a 538 article that highlights that point. 538 created this chart of when to go for 2 or not to go for 2 in an article that they had a year or 2 ago. And a couple notes here. This is in the NFL, and this is also with 10 minutes left in the game. So, we're in college football with a full quarter and 4 minutes left. So it's going to be a little bit different, but we can still see some of the same principles. This table essentially shows you your probability increase of winning based on the extra point versus the 2-point conversion, considering the averages that you're actually going to get those things accomplished. So if we look at -9, which is the deficit after this touchdown, we can see that there's a 2.9% increase with an extra point versus 3.3% increase with a 2-point conversion. So very close, not a huge deal between the two. What I think leans me more towards going for 2 in this situation is it does allow you to make better strategic options in the future. Knowing that you're down 9, well, now you know you're going to need 2 scores and can adjust your game plan accordingly. Whereas if you're down 7, it might change the way that you play later in the game. So I think this is a very close one between the two. I don't mind kicking the extra point, but I probably lean towards going for a 2-point conversion. So Auburn decides to go ahead and kick the extra point. Some game goes by. Now we're looking at a situation where Auburn's driving with 10 minutes left and scores a touchdown. All right, so you're down 2 points. Obviously, 2-point conversion ties up the game. This is a no-brainer, right? But then they get thrown a curveball. So now we have a bit of a unique situation. Going for 2 will be from the 7.5-yard line, so it won't impact the extra point that much. Either way, you're something like 97% to make it. But going for 2 has drastically decreased, and I want to try and calculate exactly how much it decreased by. According to this blog that I found, which calculated a lot of this data over a large sample, it predicts the probability of converting on 4th down, but also when it's goal to go. Remember, when you're trying to figure out your chance at getting into the end zone, you can't calculate it the same as if you were looking at 4th and 7.5 from, let's just say, midfield, because there's a shorter field and less to defend. So we need to look at data where teams have to basically get a touchdown and they're 7.5 yards away. According to this table, between 7 and 8 yards away puts you at 25% probability to convert. So not bad, but not nearly as good as it would be from the 2.5-yard line, where you may even be a small favorite. This makes this decision much closer. And again, looking back on this table from 538, we can see that when you're down 2, it's substantially better to go for the 2-point conversion than to kick the extra point. And that's simple. Obviously, if you tie this guy up, it's anyone's game. But if you come away down 1, well, you're still losing. Being that you're now half as likely to convert your 2-point conversion, we could maybe even reasonably say that the probability increase here for the 2-point conversion would be cut something like in half. It's hard to estimate, but one thing is for sure, it's much better to be tied than it is to be down 1 point. And even if you're now only going to hit that 25% of the time, it's still probably a risk worth taking. Just note the counter argument to that for a moment. There's one advantage for going for one, which is when there's 10 minutes left, it's pretty likely that there are going to be remaining scores. You know, you're about 30% to score some type of points when you get the ball. And so given that there's going to be 3 or 4 more possessions, well, it might be the case that that 1 point could end up helping you. As an example, what if Oregon went down the field and scored a touchdown? Well, now having that point is huge. It keeps it a 1 possession game. So there are some counter arguments, but again, the value is just not quite there on the 1 point conversion compared to the 2 points. There's another argument being made that this quarterback is not exactly an excellent passer, and so because of that, you can't put the game in his hands. But here's the thing. If you're a tier 1 college football program like Auburn is, your quarterback is going to be at least somewhat decent at passing, or what are you doing? Yes, especially in college football, you can get away with having a quarterback whose strengths are primarily running. I think back to Vince Young back in the day when he beat USC in the Rose Bowl. You know, you can get away with these types of things, but at the same time, you should be able to convert 4th and 8, essentially type scenario, an 8-yard gain for a 2-point conversion. One last note here before we talk about the next one. I think it's also important to consider that the chance of scoring in the future is higher now too. We might be around 30% to score on any possession, but if you're going to use all 4 downs like a team would when they're down points, well, then that number can rise. It may also increase the amount of times that you give up the ball with really good field position for your opponents, but your overall scoring frequency increases too. So there is still plenty of time left to play. This is probably slightly bad, but not the end of the world. So we've looked at 2 straight extra points where going for 2 was probably a little bit better, but not the end of the world type of decision. But this last one is truly baffling. With just 10 seconds left in the game, Auburn manages to throw a long pass for a touchdown to go up by 5. A truly amazing moment, especially for people who had Auburn -4. It was good. It was especially unlikely for Auburn to cover because when teams are down only a point, well, they tend to kick field goals to win, so touchdowns are even less likely than they would be normally. But regardless of any of this, the Auburn coach now has a tough decision. Does he want to take the extra point to go up by 6, where he would still lose to a touchdown extra point? Or does he want to make the choice to half the time be up by 7 and the other half the time still lose to that touchdown extra point? This is a really tough one. You could either almost always lose to a touchdown, or you could choose to half the time not. Let's see what he goes with.
And Oregon, in an opportunity for a huge statement win.
Of course, the decision to go up by 6 late in the game, a tried and true technique used by, I guess, Auburn. Now, Auburn kicks off, and Stanford has a series of fortunate events that put them with just a few seconds left, not that far away from the end zone. It's only at this juncture that Kirk Herbstreit realizes that Auburn has made a mistake.
Ducks are going to have a shot at the end zone. Davis nearly broke it.
And now you're thinking, I'm looking at the score, right? Why did they go for 2?
And this really highlights the problem with the way that a lot of analysts think about football, or really any kind of game. They only bring things up as negatives really once they could matter. The moment that they saw them line up for an extra point up 5, someone should have said something. And these organizations should know better than to do this. You know, winning these games is so important. You only get 1 season a year. You only play 12 games in the regular season. Every moment counts. I mean, frankly, this is why I think the decision to go for it or not shouldn't be made by the head coach at all. They should have some kind of in-game analyst that knows the stats and makes these decisions for them. Obviously, the coaches or the offensive coordinator could pick the play, but there should be someone with a calculator that knows what's going on. These mistakes didn't cost Auburn the game this time, but they might in the future. But one thing I'm sure of is it's going to happen to someone this season, and I'm looking forward to covering it. Thanks for watching the vid today, and if you're interested in checking out more videos from me, hit the subscribe button. I'm planning on doing a variety of different video topics that I'm interested in, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, thanks for joining today, guys. I'll see you soon.